Now we have understood that genes are basically responsible for transcription and translation of DNA into proteins, and they in turn contribute to the development of the brain, and it is the developed brain which is responsible for the cognitive abilities that we display, and it is this manifested behavior, the displayed behavior, as well as the makeup, that the back end support which is provided by the anatomy, by the neurotransmitters and so forth. These are the subject matter of psychology. Now, brain anatomy, neurotransmitters, the receptors, neural interconnections, they are all regulated by the genes. But what is very interesting is that the environment it may modify, or it can even disrupt the actions that are genetically coded, and we will see this with certain examples. Let us take the example of ADHD. A variant of dopamine receptor gene may be associated with ADHD, okay, and the thinner brain tissues in the area that handles attention. Okay. And ADHD, as we all know, that it has to do with hyperactivity and as well as attention deficit. Now, polymorphism of DRD4, dopamine D4 receptor gene, this is known as 7 repeat form. Now, those individuals who have 7 repeat form of DRD4, they have been found to have thinner tissue in their right orbitofrontal, inferior prefrontal and posterior parietal cortex. Okay. So, this is again the brain anatomy, how the genes regulate them, okay. And because there is something, the anatomy is based on the genetic makeup, this genetic makeup in turn finally makes you subject to ADHD, one of the disorders that psychology looks at. The amount of grey matter in prefrontal cortex, that is also determined genetically by the makeup of the genetic makeup of the parents. Now, this in turn is correlated with the cognitive ability of the child. The brain areas that control reading skills and language, they were found virtually identical in identical twins. Okay. And as you know that identical twins are those who share exactly the same genes. Now, in siblings 60% difference has been observed, and this helps us understand why certain brain diseases they run in the family. Let us come to neurotransmitters. Dopamine and serotonin, they are both involved in the muscle control, memory, sleep and emotional behavior. Now, fine muscular movement, all types of motor activities, memory, sleep, emotion, all of them have prime importance as far as the subject matter of psychology is concerned. Now, they are also associated to some illnesses also, say like Parkinson's disease. Now, Parkinson's is the disease where the motor movement gets compromised with, mood disorders, which has to do with the emotional balance or imbalance that you experience. Now, let us come to mouse study conducted on rats, and we draw inference from there and then extend it to humans. Now, TPH2 gene in mouse, it produces 50 to 70% less serotonin. Now, this is an example of naturally occurring genetic difference that controls production of neurotransmitter. Now, it is not known whether TPH2 varies in humans or whether different variant affect production of serotonins. Let us take another example of FOXP2 gene, which is basically responsible for oral communication that human beings show. Now, human beings learn vocalization through imitation. Okay. So, you see others pronouncing, you see the selection of words, how it is pronounced, the vocabulary you gradually gather, and then this is how vocalization and the entire communication develops in human beings. Now, development since 2001 have elucidated how a single gene contributes to our oral communication. We have talked about mutation, Now, mutation in FOXP2 gene in one of the families from United Kingdom named as KE family, this is the code used for them. Now, this has caused verbal dyspraxia in the members of that very family. Now, this is basically a developmental disorder with significant disruption of speech and language. The inheritance of FOXP2 is consistent with an autosomal dominant mutation. It leads to disorder of orofacial movement. Orofacial means that the facial muscle which is close to this, which is also responsible for the oral movement. No? So, this very part, no, which helps you rotate your oral cavity, the lips, tongue movement and so forth. Now, this very disorder, it leads to the disorder of orofacial movement, thereby causing speech and language disorder. Now, FOXP2 is not the gene responsible for speech or language, but then its dominant effect can very easily be seen, because the sufferer of this very problem suffers from verbal dyspraxia. Let us take another example. At birth, human babies are barely developed. The intrauterine conditions are very conducive for the child, whereas the external environment is full of unproductive sensory inputs. Now, this allows the nervous system to develop in harmony with the environment. But what happens when the child takes birth? The little cognitive development at birth, it gets enriched by life experiences, and this also lead to developmental variations among human beings. Now, genes specify growth hormones and receptors for them. They also specify thyroid hormone and insulin. Now, growth of bone is also specified by some other genes. With these genetic predispositions also, one's height might not achieve full genetic potential if he or she is experiencing starvation during puberty. That means that you have the genetically predisposed secretion of rather balanced secretion, the desired secretion of the growth hormone and the insulin, but still if you have an environmental barrier of starvation, the situation in your life that does not allow you nutritious intake of food, starvation in turn, despite having a proper secretion of growth hormone and insulin, still can stunt your fullest growth. So, although you are genetically predisposed, but then you do not achieve your fullest potential. Now, it is difficult to map human behavior to genes, but there are genetic markers of abnormal behavior, but the genes affecting abnormality actually do not guide normal behavior. Basically, genetic markers of abnormal behaviors are known, but if you go for a reverse cycle, okay, that is it that these genes that affects abnormality, are they also responsible for guiding the normal behavior? That is not true. We will take some example. Let us take the example of phenylketonuria. Now, phenylketonuria is a metabolic genetic disorder where the deficiency takes place in phenylaniline hydroxylase, the PAH, okay, which is a hepatic enzyme. Now, what happens actually in normal situation, phenylaniline, which is an amino acid, okay, should actually convert into tyrosine. Now, in the patients of phenylketonuria, what happens? This does not take place, and in turn, okay, the phenylaniline, it gets converted into phenylpyruvate, okay, which is also called as phenylketone.
Formation of new cells and repairing of tissues require proteins. Proteins are made up of amino acids. Unwanted amino acids are broken down and eliminated out of the body through urine. Phenylalanine is one of the amino acids. Individuals with phenylketonuria cannot process phenylalanine and it starts building up in their blood. This in turn adversely affects neurons. Children with untreated phenylketonuria tend to have a smaller than average head. This is known as microcephaly.
So, if you take this very example of phenylketonuria, you realize that basically this is something that is caused by gene mutation, which is also manifested in intellectual handicap and behavioral abnormalities. So, basically it has to do with a metabolic disorder, okay, mutation in the gene which does not allow the chemical to get broken down in the desired manner. So, phenylalanine, okay, which should have actually taken a different route, suddenly you realize that it gets converted into phenylketone, and in turn this metabolic problem affects the intellectual ability of the individual. It is also responsible for certain behavioral abnormalities. Now, intellectual handicap, okay, one would ideally map it to the psychological aspect of the behavior. Okay. Same is the case with behavioral abnormality, but when you realize that basically it is the problem of breaking down of one chemical in the body which is responsible for this, then you realize that okay, there is a genetic root to such type of intellectual inabilities and behavioral abnormalities. Now, the mutated gene causing phenylketonuria is not responsible for normal intelligence in human beings. So, it is very interesting, no? The mutated gene that we find responsible for phenylketonuria actually is not responsible for intellect. So, intelligence is not controlled, not moderated, not guided by this gene, but then you realize that this gene, okay, somewhere adversely affects the breakdown mechanism, the metabolism, and the metabolic problem actually results into intellectual impairment, thereby adversely affecting the normality of the individual. Now, most human behavior are complex and they comprise of a range from normal to pathological. Okay. If you remember, we had talked about the full range of possible reactions from normal to pathological in our introductory session. Let us recollect that and then come to an example. Now, feeling sad is a normal behavior. Okay. Because of certain environmental condition, okay, you feel sad, but then your sadness is different, okay, when you compare it with depression. So, feeling sad is a normal behavior, okay, but then if one might feel sad to the extent that you are considered to be clinically depressed, then sadness no more remains sadness. No, the magnitude of it has changed, the whole nature of sadness has changed. We have talked about Francis Galton when we were going through the schools of thoughts, historical milestones, and he was the one who also talked about eugenics. In the early 20th century, eugenics focused on genetic causes of mental retardation, alcoholism, criminal behavior as well as immoral behavior. Let us take some example from the modern study. Aldehyde dehydrogenase is an enzyme that metabolizes alcohol. Now, this enzyme is regulated by genes and the variation in the genetic code can result into inactive enzyme. Okay. So, if you have an inactive enzyme in your body, then such individuals will always get sick if they consume alcohol. Okay. Now, if you fall sick because of the absence of this enzyme in your body, okay, then the behavioral consequence of it would be that you will always try to refrain yourself from drinking. Now, this is basically a genetic control over your alcoholic behavior. Okay. You would never prefer drinking, you will never feel taking alcohol simply because you have a metabolic issue, you have the absence of the enzyme. Okay. Now, think of the other side of the story. Okay. There are religious belief and there are cultural restrictions, okay, which basically prohibits you from consumption of alcohol. Now, this is an environmental influence on the drinking behavior. So, in the previous case when we were looking at this enzyme which basically metabolizes alcohol, you have a genetic control over alcoholism, whereas when we took the other case of the religious belief and cultural restrictions, this is an environmental control over your drinking behavior. So, drinking behavior remains the same, but the control at one end you find that there could be a genetic basis of control and there could also be an environmental basis of control. So, this is an interesting example where you realize that drinking behavior gets moderated because of both the factors, the genetic as well as the environmental factors. Let us take another example. If a pregnant woman consumes alcohol during a specific period, it has been found that the intellectual ability of the child gets adversely affected. Now, the cognitive capability of inhabitants of houses, okay, where the walls are painted with lead based paints, okay, that might also adversely affect the intellectual ability of the child, the cognitive capability of the child. Okay. Now, this is an example of how environmental conditions they affect the development of our brain. Okay. So, in one case the mother consumes alcohol and then you realize that this has adversely affected the intellectual capability of the child. In the other case you realize that the walls are painted with the lead based paints and this in turn adversely affects the cognitive capability of the child. So, again both the conditions and you realize there is the intellectual capability is compromised only because of these factors. Let us come to another interesting psychological behavior, okay, a construct which is again well researched in psychology, novelty seeking, okay, your search for novel experience. Now, this trait is reportedly correlated to identical twins. Studies have confirmed association between novelty seeking behavior and D4DR neuroreceptors. Now, D4DR we have talked about it, this is a dopamine D4 receptor and the neuroreceptors are also responsible in mood regulation. Let us take the example of dyslexia. The image that you see here, inverted H for example, okay, mirror image of S for example, no? This is how dyslexic children they write. You can see here on your screen, on the top you have the English alphabets and on the lower side you have the days of the week and you realize that there are certain alphabets where mirror images have been used, okay, and this is one of the problems in the dyslexic children. Now, dyslexia is a moderately genetic problem. The origin is moderately associated with the genes. The phonological awareness is linked to the region on chromosome 6. Decoding of a single word is linked to a region on chromosome 15 and you know that these two faculties are basically key to reading disability. Okay. So, simply because phonological awareness gets compromised because of chromosome 6 and then you realize that the word, how to decode a word, okay, that has to do with chromosome 15 and because these two things have some problem, therefore, you suffer from dyslexia. So, this is the genetic origin of dyslexia. You are looking at two hemispheres of the human brain. Language is primarily considered a left hemisphere function. This is the temporal lobe of the left hemisphere. You now see the four lobes, the frontal, parietal, temporal and the occipital lobes. During formal education, we are trained for different reading and writing skills. The three neural systems for reading are located in the left hemisphere of the brain. You see them as regions 1, 2 and 3 on the screen. 1 is in the region of the inferior frontal gyrus, which is also known as Broca's area. 2 is in the parieto-temporal region and 3 is in the occipito-temporal region, which is also known as visual word form area, that is VWFA. This plays significant role in fluent reading. It has been observed that compared to normal individuals, those with dyslexia have less gray matter in the left parieto-temporal area. Many of them also have less white matter in the same area and less white matter could adversely affect communication between the brain areas. The interior system in those with dyslexia is slightly overactivated compared to non-impaired readers. In contrast, the two posterior systems are underactivated. The underactivation of the left posterior reading system
is the neural signature for dyslexia.
Now, the specific gene in the mechanism of dyslexia is yet to be understood, but at least the location is known. So, now you know that chromosome 6, you know chromosome 15, and both of them play an important role in this very learning disability. Now, if you look at literature in psychology, you have a whole length of description on dyslexia. So, this is an interesting way of looking at psychological phenomena, the constructs which are examined in psychology, studied in psychology, and then you realize that we have both the genetic control over all types of psychological constructs as well as the environmental conditions that also affect the psychological constructs. We will continue with this when we meet next.